So this show is on the road. Thank you everyone for tuning in. I'm really excited for this panel. I'll let the panelists introduce themselves in a moment, but my name is Ben, and I'm a let's see, former product manager, still deeply in product management. I'm spending a lot of my time these days helping product managers and people get ready for interviews and land their dream jobs. And one of the most common questions I get these days is, yeah, like all your advice is great, Ben, but how do I actually land interviews? It's really crowded, it's noisy. So I decided to do something about that and put this panel together. So hopefully people that know way more than I do about how to land interviews will be able to drop some really good nuggets. Um, Let me get my slides up here. Just give me a moment. I think the housekeeping you want to get started with.
Don't accidentally show your text messages, Ben.
I know.
Especially the
I
ones
got
with
nothing.
me.
I got nothing to hide. Nothing to hide. All right. Here we go. Wait. There it. Oh my God. How do people share stuff these days?
Dude, it's only 2025. Why would we
Yeah,
know how to use Zoom?
seriously.
I know. It's not like I do this all the time either. Okay, here we go. So here are some faces and names and companies and logos. Um, Before they introduce themselves, some quick housekeeping for the session. So this talk is going to be recorded and emailed afterwards to everyone who signed up for it. You can turn off your video. Ideally, keep your mic on mute so you don't kind of interfere with the quality of the experience for everyone else. This is going to go by pretty quick, so feel free to rewatch it later. And then please hold questions to the end. I'll be keeping my eye on the chat while facilitating, but I'm going to try to stay present in the conversation. So don't assume that we see what you're putting in the chat until the very end. All right, so we'll do intros, we'll have a discussion, and then we'll do some Q&A. And I would love to start with Amina. Amina, would you mind introducing yourself for the audience?
Hi, everyone. I'm Amina. I run the global talent team here at Vercel. We are hiring PMs and we've been tweaking how we do the process. So I'm excited to chat with you all and give you some insight.
Nice.
Passing it over to Owen.
Thanks for being here.
What's up, everybody? My name's Nolan. I was the first recruiter, first HR hire at DoorDash, employee number 50. I led the talent team there through about 800 employees. I then became the chief people officer at Carta, founded my own venture-backed tech company that was building a talent marketplace for executives. And now I am doing this podcast called HR Heretics plus 10X Recruiting. And I do some advising and coaching for early stage startups.
Nolan was also the last CEO that I worked with in my full-time job at Continuum, where I was head of product over there. So
I convinced Ben to never work for somebody else again.
And then the next person that's going to go is Troy, who's at fault for introducing me to Nolan. So,
yeah, I'm in this causal chain somewhere. Hello, everyone. I'm Troy. I started my career in recruiting as a first in startup recruiter turned head of talent, then went to like big co at Google and people ops. And then I spent the last 10 years almost building software for recruiting teams. And I'm now, I lead a company called Guide, which helps companies both make more efficient the candidate experience and elevate the experience for each candidate going through the process. So yeah, hopefully some of the perspective that we have sitting on top of a lot of companies can be helpful here.
Awesome. Thanks everyone for making the time. So the way that we want to structure this panel today is we're going to cover three main topics. So first is how companies find the best talent these days and why referrals are really outpacing applications that are cold. The second is ways to become visible beyond your resume. So how do you really get recruiters to find you versus trying to kind of play that application game where you go to them? And then specific tips about converting your cold contacts or your loose contacts into referrals for opportunities. So, and we'll go around the horn for each of those. So I'm going to stop sharing the slides now because this next part is going to be mostly conversation. So yeah, Amina, I'd love for you to maybe take a stab at the first question. And what I'd love to ask is, what are the biggest trends you're seeing these days on the employer side that you think candidates in this market might not be understanding?
Yeah, thank you, Ben. So there are a couple of things that come to mind. So number one is how are we using AI and in terms of like the interview process internally. So how we're using AI is really through like sourcing strategy, it's through coordination, it's also through looking through inbound. So you may all not know this, but many companies are getting thousands and thousands and thousands of applications. We have like 30,000 inbound applications and we have not gone through all of them. We just don't have enough of the space and time to do that. And so what I really tell people in my network is like two ways of how do you get in front of your employers is first of all through your network. Definitely referrals are always prioritized, and it can be a warm referral too. It doesn't have to be completely like that person knows you, but if they're getting introduced and they have heard from somebody that you are really great, then we are willing to talk to them. And that is like number one. Number two, that I've seen this is that sending a cold outreach to us with actual work that you've done. Like, I don't like messages that are like 3 paragraphs long and they're super wordy. And I'm like, I'm just not going to read this. It's like too much. But if you send me a message of like, here are my ships, here's what I produced, here's the impact it's had on the business, here's like 5 bullet points of why you should talk to me. People actually are sending our CEO emails like that. He forwards them to me every single day. I even have a private channel with him where he just like drops in links, he drops in X messages that he gets, he drops in emails that he gets, and then we sift through it and then we transfer it over to the right recruiter or to the right hiring manager. And that's really how you're going to be able to differentiate yourself. If you're just applying internally, like you're probably just and you're sending like a long cover letter, and also like please don't send like 5 page resumes. Like no one's going to read that. It has a bunch of block and text. Like we just want to see what you shipped, the impact that it's had on the business, metrics that go with it, and then like that will tell us why we should be talking to you and if your work is relevant.
Yep. What I'll add to that, like that is really good advice. I will add that since 2021, according to GEM, which is an applicant tracking system, there are now 3x the amount of inbound applications from that time period. So 4 years later, there's 3 times more inbound for people like Amina and her team to sift through. And I think there's a little bit of a false notion that if you submit your resume through an applicant tracking system, that AI is going to scrape for the keywords and then put you at the top. And so like, you know, fill your resume with all these keywords because that's going to help you get to the top of the stack. No one's seeing it. And as Amina said, like 5 page resumes is actually more of a demerit than anything else. The other thing to remember is like, you know, we've gone through this huge era, especially in tech companies, with layoffs, and layoffs are still happening. And the team that was like most impacted by layoffs was the recruiting team. And so they have objectively fewer people on the recruiting team to go through the inbound resumes and to manage the candidate experience. So you'll see all of these horror stories, not only of like, oh, I submitted my resume 100 times, never heard back, but then you'll hear horror stories of like, hey, I had like these 5 interviews with companies and nobody ever talked to me after. And a big reason why is because these recruiting teams have been decimated by layoffs. They objectively have fewer people. And so they are just trying to figure out how to stay afloat and push through the candidates that get to ultimately the final stages.
There's a lot of competitive dynamics that are worth noting are happening at the same time. Everything that Amina and Nolan said, there's more applicants, there is a smaller recruiting team, but you're also not competing only with other people today, or perhaps more folks that are looking for employment. There's also just a lot of candidates that we're seeing who are really trying to use AI as a competitive advantage in their job search, which in some cases is helping them mass apply more easily. So you get a lot more low signal applications in the pipeline. And so I don't necessarily agree with that strategy, which we can talk about a bit later. But I do think that I really love Amina's point around a really targeted cold outreach, which gets to the right people. I think there is a framing challenge and an opportunity for you to position yourself as kind of a one-on-one or a particularly unique hire amongst the sea of possible options. And Nolan, I've recently been challenged on my own view, where I think you and I were jamming over the last couple of months. Like, where is this notion that everyone's using AI to stack rank resumes, like everyone's keyword stuffing and whatnot? I'm now seeing anecdotes of people implementing tools that in fact are stack ranking. and it's challenging my own view, right? And some of the early AI tooling that's getting into recruiting teams is lead signal, it's lead stacking, lead ranking. I do think though that there's a misconception about the way in which you can game that system. I think
Yep.
largely recruiters and software are really looking at very few data points on a resume, like where you last worked and the company name weighted highly above all else. And so I think there are ways to get in front of your employer or potential employer that don't involve the resume at all.
I also wanted to add, there's different channels of how people get into the pipeline, and how do recruiters think about it? You're pretty much prioritizing sourcing and referrals. Like that's how you spend most of your day. And when you kick off a search, so we're kicking off a PM search right now. The absolute first thing that a recruiter and a hiring manager do is let's go see who we know, and let's go see who are the best people in the network who may not even be looking. Let's ask our network who the best people are, and let's go and see folks who have gone and built and shipped the products that are similar to what we're looking to do. And so it's not even like, okay, yeah, we're going to post a job, we're going to get inbound, but that's pretty much like the last thing that we're spending our time on. So what you really want to be able to do also is like make sure that you have the right network to get in front of these people, and then also make sure that and I know we're going to talk about this a little bit later, is like your profile showcases the products that you've worked on and what you've built.
Yeah, let's talk about that. So what are some things that you think people can do to make their profile, and feel free to expand the definition of whether we're talking about just LinkedIn or resume and LinkedIn or anything else that you would look for. Like what can they do to basically present themselves in a way that will get them noticed from what you're seeing?
Yeah, so I'll start with this one, and I'm actually like not going to talk about the profile at first. There's a meme online right now that's you can just do things. And Amina's talking about this right now, which is like an example is, somebody emails G, the Vercel CEO, with like hey, I want to work at Vercel, but here's like examples of my work product and how I'm going to provide value to your company. That's an example of just doing things. There's two stories that I want to tell really quickly. One is this dude named George Jacobs. So George ultimately ended up working at DoorDash. Nobody knew who the hell he was. He was like 20 years old, and he emailed me and Tony Xu, the CEO of DoorDash, every single day for like 21 days. And they were very quick emails, but it got progressively more interesting as time went on. It wasn't the same thing. It wasn't like begging for stuff. It got progressively more interesting because what George ended up doing was actually going into restaurants and trying to figure out why they weren't on DoorDash. And so he took this step that no one else was taking and then shared his learnings in the emails to me and Tony. And so Tony was like, why have we not talked to this guy? And I was like, you're totally right. Like we should ping him. He worked at DoorDash for like 4 years and was one of our most impactful employees. Another example, which was on X recently, is this gal named Julia Fedorin. And she wanted an internship at Shopify. And Shopify didn't have any internships on their jobs page. And so what she did is she created a video that said like, Shopify, you don't have any interns. How about hiring this one? And it was like a minute-long video that showcased her unique value that she could add to the company and why she would be great there. So like you're hearing from Amina right now is like the moment a recruiter opens up a rec, they're going to their networks. They're not going to their applicant tracking system. They're going to the people who are really great at this job, and they're asking around that way. And so you have to figure out how to stand out in this like sea of other people who are competing, especially in a market that's already hyper competitive.
I'll piggyback on that, Nolan. The usage of X. So, I'm going to be biased with Vercel. This is not always the case for every single company, but Vercel is very active on X. Our CEO is very active on X. Our leadership is very active on X. We are a developer company. Developer community is pretty active. And what I've seen really work is like, honestly, like it's not even messaging us. It's people posting the own work that they're doing, and we're finding them and we're seeing them and we're getting noticed. So it's like, showcase the work that you're doing. We're definitely in a world where it's not about what you say, it's about what you do. And we don't really care about the words. We care about the ship of your work. I've also seen like Guillermo is always like keeping track of like what's really interesting, what's happening on X. That's how he's noticing. And piggybacking on your story, Nolan, we've had multiple candidates who have been like, so we'll talk about our V0 product. We have a V0 product. If those of you who don't know that, you should definitely check it out. It's our AI product where you can build websites for those who are not technical. And people will message G and they'll just show him code that they've built and like on V0, or they'll message other folks on the team and then they'll send a video of here's how you can make V0 better. Like that's what you're looking for in a product manager, right? Is you're understanding who your customer base is, you're understanding how to make the product better. Just do those things.
Since nobody here wanted to talk about LinkedIn, I think I'll fall on the sword for us. I think for engineers, there's a slightly different dynamic from the point of view of the recruiting team, which biases towards just show me the work. I think for some other roles, maybe PM is somewhere in the middle by my guess, but I do think narrative and positioning matters as a candidate. I am a believer in that. And I think right now, the first place folks are going to look where you'll either be found by the company and reached out to interview, which is the sourcing channel that Amina's mentioning, very big priority for recruiting teams, is your LinkedIn. And I would say what I've seen be effective is LinkedIns that are very narrowly positioned to a very specific role or company type that is perhaps the companies that you'd like to target. Swiss Army knife, general, people that are kind of good at everything, tend to not have a lot of resonance with recruiting teams because they have very particular needs they're trying to solve for. But when you really narrow your narrative, I actually like to use a pretty tactical, I recommend a pretty tactical approach, which is there is like a summary section at the top of your LinkedIn. I think you can write 3 sentences that do a lot of work there that most people just don't do. And I think that's positioning your intent and desires in your next role. Maybe a quick, like, I'm a 0 to 1 startup PM. I'm really passionate about this particular phase, and I'm looking for a, seed to Series A startup to spend my next several years at building 0 to 1. Okay. That's very different than, like, that will probably detract the Aminas of the world at Vercel, perhaps in this example. But guys hiring a PM, like, you're gonna be the first person we message over any other PM that says, I've worked at Google, I've worked at all these fancy companies. We're like, they don't understand 0 to 1. We happen to be 0 to 1. We're not Google. We have a very particular need. So in a way, you have to, I think, be polarizing, and I find that effective. And in order to be polarizing, you have to know what you want. And so I think your job search starts with having a stack ranked priority list of exactly who you're targeting, almost as if you are hunting for the company. They're not hunting for you. And you know who you want to target, and you're optimizing against that. And you can iterate over time and change who you're targeting. But I do think that a sharper, harpoon will do more work.
Yeah, I have another, just a quick anecdote I'll share to +1. That is, I was working with someone recently who got 3 extremely compelling big tech offers because they figured out that their kind of like candidate market fit was really as like a level 7 ICPM who focuses on trust and safety in like the AI space. And they basically had like a really good story to tell about why they're perfect for that kind of role. And they got 3 offers within like 2 months from really good companies. And I think that that's the level of kind of specificity that I see like resonating in the market versus people that have that kind of generalist background to Troy's point. Go ahead, Amina.
No, I was going to add on to what Troy was saying is that I actually do think most companies, at least in the mid-stage world, are looking for the scrappy PMs, the 0 to 1, because we want people who know how to move fast. Obviously, you need to be able to like understand product management and how you partner with your stakeholders. But I really like that, Troy. So that's what I was going to add is like calling out that you're a 0 to 1 builder will actually be very attractive because people don't want you to be like super niche and I can only do this one aspect unless you're going to a bigger tech and there's a very specific type of role. So it depends on what you're targeting.
Yeah, I'll add a couple things that I think are like the basics that we missed, but that I think this group knows that are obvious, but maybe candidates don't know, is like your profile picture should be like the best photo you have of yourself. Like, if it's just some like iPhone selfie, like go pay $50 to have somebody like take a nice headshot of you. right? Like humans do make judgments based off of initial impression. Whether or not we like that, that's the truth. I've taken a lot of crap for this, but like if you have the open to work banner, that is going to work against you. It just objectively is. The other things that we look for as recruiters in the profile is I am specifically looking for promotion history. So if you have been at a company and you have been promoted, it is so important to indicate that to us, because that shows that the company is saying like, yes, this is a good employee. We are now giving them a bigger title, more responsibility, and more money, which is a shortcut for me to be like, oh, maybe they are good. In a sea of people I can reach out to, I am now going to choose to reach out to you.
+1 to both. Hot take, Nolan, on open to work, but agreed.
Truth.
In our world of progressive tech, I triply agree. I'm not sure outside of my bubble what's going
That's
on.
fair. That's fair. I think that's a fair point.
Yeah.
VC-backed tech doesn't
one-
get attracted to people that are too available. It's like dating. It's a very competitive market.
Amina, could you just comment on just like the TLDR of why to you it's definitely not a positive signal and potentially a negative signal of any kind?
Yeah, and it is a hot take and it's a hard conversation, but the truth of how we think about it internally is like you want to go after people who are not always looking. And now again, there are certain situations, right? There are people who have been laid off. There are certain specific types of teams that have been really impacted, and I understand that's the way that you're promoting yourself. But typically when you're a recruiter and typically when you're looking for folks, you're like, who are the best people I know? The best people I know are not always looking for a new job. And you want to go after them and you want to have to convince them to come and join you. Whether that's, and again, that's like not always the case. That is a thought process. That is a dialogue that you have. And so it is a hot take, but open to work can sometimes seem like you're desperate. Not saying that you are, but that can be the perception. And so you want to be able to set yourself up more of having your profile put together in the right way than it is like having the open to work banner and doing better messaging and getting out in your network. I also very, very much like +1000, Nolan, is like career trajectory is one of the most important things that a recruiter or a hiring manager or a CEO is looking for when they're looking at somebody that you want to hire. You want to show that you can continue to take more on in the role that you're in. You also want to minimize short stints. Right? You want to show that you are committed to a company, that you can grow with a company, you can grow within a company, and that even when a company has like hard times, things are more challenging, you're willing to stick it out. Not always the case. There are certain situations that things happen, it's difficult, you've been laid off, or the company went under, or there were situations. But if you have multiple short stints, that will be seen as a red flag.
I will just continue to press the like positioning piece of this, because I think there are realities of our career stories that are true. Maybe we had a short stint. I believe that you are almost always benefited by controlling the narrative. Whatever the truth is can be colored on top of. And if there is a short stint in your history, or 2 or 3, you have the opportunity to articulate why and what that was. Maybe you went on sabbatical because you were burnt out. I don't necessarily think, and maybe you have some color around the calculus there and how motivated you are and recharged to get back into work. I think that might do more work than what one might assume or imagine if there's just no context provided. So you can control the narrative on your LinkedIn profile and resume. You can control the narrative in your interview process, but be prepared to speak on these. And I would say you should assume that the looker, the audience, is assuming probably they're looking for reasons to rule you out, not rule you in.
Exactly.
And so assume negative intent in a weird way. I know that sounds kind of bad, and it's not because there's anything wrong with you. It's because there is a tsunami of options from the recruiting team standpoint and a very limited bandwidth to sift through. So if there's any reason to just, even if finding a needle in the haystack is a hard problem for recruiting teams, and they have to make quick decisions. So if there's any reason to rule you out, there's always going to be another person on behind you. And so don't give that reason. Get ahead of it.
Yeah.
Be proactive.
Yeah. And by the way, a short stint is considered basically anything under 2 years. But if there's a sequence of, between you're leaving between 2 and 3 years, that can also be considered short stints. And the reason why, just so people understand, is like building companies takes a long time. And if you have somebody once said to me, nothing really happens in less than 4 years. Like you really haven't seen anything. You haven't like lived through enough adversity. You haven't lived through enough challenges. Like you haven't seen enough of the movie. And so that's what the recruiting team is thinking. By the way, the inverse of that is also true. Like my wife's been at Google for 12 years. Recruiters don't ping her anymore. She's been there too long. And there's a narrative about her that like, oh, she can only survive at big tech company. And so both ends of the spectrum are true. Just to build off what Troy was saying, your job is to explain that before I actually even talk to you. Like you have to be able to explain to me with your profile what's going on here. And so, you know, kind of thinking about which hat you're wearing, I find that oftentimes candidates are just wearing this candidate hat. And when they show up, they're just like, well, pick me, pick me. And instead, what they should be doing is trying to put on their employer hat and thinking from an employer's perspective, which is, okay, this person has, you know, 2 stints in a row to where they've been at the job for less than 2 years. You need to proactively explain to the employer in your profile in some unique way what was going on there.
Find silver lining if there is and highlight it. The question to Nolan's point, I think the example is if there's another candidate that has roughly similar skills but doesn't have those short stints right next in the stack, why would the employer pick you with the short stints, right? So assume there is one of those next in the stack and position yourself against that.
Yeah. Before we move on, so I just wanted to make sure we cover any like super big red flags. So we talked about, I know it's a hot take, but at least people here seem to think the open for work banner. We had the bad profile photo on LinkedIn or something that looks like you really are not trying to market yourself or position yourself well. We talked about a series of short stints that don't have a good story that accompanies why that might be happening. Are there any other big red flags that would are cause for kind of like pressing the X button in the ATS to like remove this one from the stack?
Way too long resumes.
Yeah.
The one that I don't know, this is kind of a little bit counterintuitive and kind of insider baseball, but like flipping back and forth between like big tech and startups is like, what's going on here? Like what type of person, like I'm trying to figure out like what type of person you are. And this is, again, for better or worse, this is what recruiters are trying to do in 15 seconds. So if
no
you
one's
went
calling
from,
out all of my resume flaws on this session. It's great.
yeah,
No,
exactly.
but
So
you,
if
you
you're
need to
like
explain
Ben,
it away if you're doing
yeah,
it.
and,
Right.
and if you're like Ben and you go from startup to big tech to from startup to big tech, I'm like, what are you doing? Like, pick a lane. Like, what's
That is a hot
happening
take.
here?
I would say like there's folks like Nikhil Singhal or like super like credible kind of like product um, coaches and like thought leaders who actually does recommend people every few years if they're interested make that kind of back and forth so that they can keep kind of like getting a
Yeah.
feel for both and expanding and staying relevant in both because there's like a lot to learn from both. So I think it's a good take. I don't think it's wrong, but I think there's multiple views on it.
No, I think that perspective is actually correct. I think
If you had that in your LinkedIn summary, it wouldn't be a problem.
Dumb
You had that
recruiter
written.
here, right? Dumb recruiter here who is trying to put every single person I look at into a box, right? And
Yeah,
to
like this
pattern
person can't
match-
make up their mind, right?
to pattern match with success that I've seen in the past. That can be a fine strategy and path. You need to explain it to me very simply on your LinkedIn what the hell you're doing.
Yeah. That's the key point. Just package whatever is true for you with some context and explanation that positions you in to a position of strength. And one other red flag that I see that's related, I think, Nolan, to your point of big, small, but I just don't see that much. That feels like not super common to me. What I see more commonly is an applicant that is applying to a company or a role that's totally different from their history. And I think if you come from a bunch of big tech companies and you want to get into startups, that's kind of a noble, maybe a noble next chapter for you. You need to explain that you've spent X amount of years in big companies, and here is my rationale and calculus. You know, in 10 years hence, I want to be a startup founder. So I've recognized that I need to ladder down to get more exposure to the business, and I'm really fucking stoked to get my hands dirty. And like, if you put that narrative on top of that resume, everything changes. If you don't, you're getting rejected.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Last kind of like round the horn, and then we'll get into some Q&A with the audience that I'll moderate. Troy, maybe you can take a first stab at this one. So if someone is watching this and they've got, maybe they just haven't been like the most active in kind of like nurturing their network and really keeping it warm, and now they're on the market, they're looking for a role. What are some things that you could recommend that they do to really kind of activate that network and start putting it to work for them as they look for their role?
As you've heard from Amina, there are a few channels that are highly prioritized for employers. One of the most prioritized, mostly I would say ubiquitously, is a referral that comes from one of the internal employees. Even if it's a very loose referral, I think that would go farther than a cold application. So the big question that arises is, well, what if I don't know anybody at the company? What if I don't have a big network? I would posit that this can be manufactured, and it can be manufactured by demonstrating pretty creative and scrappy skills that are a good signal for an employer. And to get really tactical, maybe I'll make one more broader point here that I think is sometimes missed, which is, as candidates, we feel that we know what's best for the employer. This employer missed me, and this job description really fits me super well. And so this is a mistake by the employer. I would, just to challenge our thinking, I would posit that the employer knows what they need better than you know what they need. So you are not always you are not always not good enough. You just might not actually be what that employer needs, and you may not know it. And so that's not on you. That's just on the fit. And so with that in mind, I think you can take a two-pronged approach to manufacturing your network. One is you learning more, and the other is you generating a referral with a network that you didn't previously have. And I think very tactically, what I typically recommend here is, at a company, you have your target list of companies, you should start there, that have a role open that's very exciting to you, that you have an intuition you'd be a good fit for. I would cold message on LinkedIn a few people, either individual contributors in that role at the company, or who have a similar role in a near org, or somebody on the recruiting or hiring related team potentially. I like to go direct to somebody that's in a role. I would message a handful of them if it's a medium to larger size company, if you can find them. And I would say, hey, here's my 2-sentence story. Keep it very short. I've done 5 years at these 2 companies. I've learned X. I'm really excited for my next chapter to be about Y. This is a key phrase that I use, or I recommend. I'm beginning to put my feelers out for what's next. I would love to learn a little bit more about your experience in this role. Can I get a 15-minute call? Many people will ignore you, but you'll get a couple bites. Get on a 15-minute call, not to manufacture a referral, but to learn. What is this person's experience? Have a couple key good questions that will help you leave that call with more conviction or less conviction that this company is a fit. And if you find yourself getting conviction during that phone call, there is a key question to ask at the end. What is the best way for me to apply? This sounds awesome. I'm more excited than I thought coming in. What is the best way for me to apply? In many cases, I have seen that person, they're kind of incentivized to refer people in, is helpful to know. And so if there is a mechanism by which that company handles warm or quasi-cold referrals, you will often get one out of that question. Somebody will say, submit an application and flag me as the referrer, or send me your resume and I'll put you in I'll flag you as an internal referral or whatever. This doesn't mean you're going to get the job. It doesn't mean you're going to get an interview, but more often than not, it will guarantee that you get a human on the recruiting team's eyes on your application. Amina, you can tell me where you might disagree.
No, actually, I was just thinking I wanted to share a story about that, Troy, that really worked. So one of the best, truly like top 5% sales engineers that we hired when I was at Segment, and then we brought on when I was at High Touch, he was coming from a completely different industry, had like nothing relevant. He was technical. He had studied math. He had somewhat of like a technical background, but we would have never probably looked at his resume or LinkedIn and would have hired him. He got involved in a Slack community. There are a lot of Slack communities that I highly recommend you look at based off of what area of focus you want to be in. And then he started to do some research, exactly what you said, Troy, and was like, oh, like segment sounds really interesting. Let me see who are the sales engineers on the team there. Let me reach out to them. And like, similar to what you said, some people didn't respond. One person did. They got coffee, and this person was like, "Oh my God, he is incredibly smart. We need to hire this person." Um, and he got hired, and then we brought him over to High Touch, another startup that I was at, and he has been truly one of like the top 5% people that I've ever worked with. And so this definitely works, and I think it's a lot of it is community building. I also think like humans want to help other humans out. They don't always know how to do that. It makes them feel good too. And so while some people are not going to respond, other people are. I always love as like on the recruiting side, when recruiters are being proactive and they're like, hey, Amna, like I admire the companies that you've worked at and I want to learn from that because I want to be able to learn how to get into technical recruiting or how to get into go-to-market recruiting. I haven't responded to all, but there have been some that I have. There have been people that I've spent time with, and it also makes me feel good. So I highly recommend that.
Yeah, that's such a good point. So I think about this as like expanding your surface area of luck. And I think a lot about this because how do people think about me when, there's a talent problem going on? Like, how can I stay top of mind? Well, like that's where my podcast comes in. And that's like my way of manufacturing is like, I'm trying to put value into the world such that when people have a problem, they ping me about it. Like that's what my business is. That's what my goal is. I think from the candidate standpoint, I think this is good advice. What I would say though is like, Simon Sinek, what does he say? There's givers, there's takers, and there's scorekeepers. And I respond very well to people who initially add value to me in some way, shape, or form. And it can be little things. Like what Amana just described is a compliment. I generally respond well to compliments. Turns out most humans do. You can like do little things of like, like liking LinkedIn posts. There was this gal recently from like January. She was just kind of like liking every single one of my LinkedIn posts and like adding kind of like valuable comments in them. And then like 3 months later, she pings me and she's like, hey, Nolan, I've been trying to get this head of talent job. I've been like banging my head against the wall. I love your content. Would you spend 15 minutes talking to me? And I was like, hell yeah. Like, I know exactly who this person is, right? Like she's been putting in the work. And I was like, I will absolutely help you because you've just been being nice to me. The thing I hate is for people who just ask for things. And they either like, it's, I don't want to be a scorekeeper, but like, we're just wired this way. We feel things. And so when people are just kind of like extracting all the time, like that's bothersome. And then the other thing that's bothersome is when they don't say thank you, right? If somebody like Amina is jumping on a call with you, I can guarantee you she's the busiest person on this conversation right now. And when you don't thank her for her time and you don't appreciate that like she's going out of her way for you, it's not that she remembers it, but she feels it. And so I just think it's like important to like remember we're still humans. Human dynamics are always at play. And, my favorite types of humans are the ones who are like being really kind, making me feel good and adding value. It makes me want to help you even more.
Yeah, if I can add two more things. So first of all, about the point of people reaching out and asking for help or wanting advice, the ones I say yes to are the ones that show they've done a bunch of the work themselves already, and there's a very specific thing that they're like not sure about, or they need like a tiebreaker. I'm torn between this or this. Like, can I get your thoughts on it and walk you through my thinking? Those are fun calls, right? Like I do those. What I hate doing is, hey, like how can I get this job? Right? It's like this is like so open-ended. You're asking me to do all the work for you right now. At least get the thinking to the point where you have a question. So that's my first piece. The second piece is, yes, you can say thank you for sure. But what I think is really strengthening from a relationship perspective is keep me posted. Like send me an update. If I took time to give you advice about a big decision and I never hear from you again, like that's like, I don't want to talk to you again after that. Like I'm like, you reach out 6 months later when you need something again. I'm like, I need the next data point in that story to feel like I'm still invested. So, cool. Well, I think we can now go to the chat, and we'll do maybe 10-ish minutes of Q&A, and then we'll close out with some ways people could learn more about what we're up to and stay in touch. Okay, so starting at the end, because I did ask everyone to please hold your questions to the end, so I'll reward those who went last. What are your thoughts on portfolios? Are they helpful or noise these days?
I think it's
Like
helpful.
websites and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it's helpful. We take a look at all candidate websites. One thing actually to share is when we have a candidate in process, we are doing our research. We're looking them up. We're looking at their websites. We're looking at their X. We're looking at their LinkedIn activity. So all of those things can help or hurt you as well. But hopefully help as when you get advice is like, we care about those things and what is the work that you put out in the world?
Yes, and you need to position it from you got to think like a marketer. Somebody gave me that feedback one time and it was like super helpful to me, right? So like if you're coming, like there's creator mode and then there's the person who's like looking at that content and the person who's receiving that content, and you have to actually think from the other perspective. So it needs to be compelling and it needs to hit right away, right? So like I'm gonna keep saying something that I want to underscore for people, which is show your work. Like show your work is the new thing. Like that's like the new thing that's important in resumes. That's the new thing that's important in everything that we're doing. So when somebody goes to your website, they should immediately see the most impactful thing. And like in a minute, they should be able to grok it in less than a minute. And so yes, and like think of it like a marketer.
Yep.
Publicize
Cool.
build in public, build on LinkedIn, build on Twitter. It's not just about getting selected and having a good portfolio at your ready. I think a lot of what's happening today are folks are getting noticed because they're putting their work out for people to find and then bring them into their hiring funnel.
Yep. Okay. Next question. We'll do these kind of like lightning style. Thoughts on positioning sabbaticals on resumes or LinkedIn?
Just put it. I think it's totally fine. There's no judgment, right? Like it's in fact, like we all understand we're human. Just put that as a sabbatical. What I've seen that has been fun is when people put like some of the things that they've done during that sabbatical.
Yeah.
So don't add too many bullet points, but like maybe highlight one or two things that you've done during that sabbatical, whether it's traveling, what were the countries that you traveled at? Is there a skill set that you built? Is there some classes that you've taken, or did you spend time with your family? Like, I think that's totally fine.
Cool. What would you tell someone who wants to make sure that they're well positioned for IC roles if they've spent the last, I don't know, let's call it 10 plus years, maybe in managerial roles, and now they're looking to get back into IC roles? Any special advice that we haven't covered yet?
So piggyback on what Troy said in terms of writing your summary, like I would add that in your summary. And most people are, even if you're looking for leadership roles, people want folks who are down to do hands-on keyboard work nowadays, especially like you don't want managers who are just delegating. And so it showcases that you actually want to get into the work.
Yeah, there's no such thing as like the ivory tower manager anymore. Like that is dead. And so if you are repositioning yourself, I think you need to be doing things like, so say if you're not in a job right now, you need to be showcasing how you are hands-on. If you are in a job right now, you need to make the transition, like the hard pivot into like getting into the details with your team.
Yep. I know we talked about the open for work banner, but another question that a couple of people asked is, do you have any other thoughts or any thoughts about like a dedicated post that's meant to kind of like announce their network, like, hey, like
Yeah.
I'm looking for my next thing. Like, any thoughts about that?
Yeah, don't do it. It's not going to help you at all. The thing that's going to help you instead of that is like what Amina's been talking about specifically with like, this is what I'm working on. Like showing your work, showing what you're doing, showing what you're building is way more impactful than, it kind of feels like an SOS to your LinkedIn community. And you will get what's confusing to people is you will get all of the hearts, like people will love it, like your friends will click on it and like it. But the people who are actually in positions of reaching out to you and hiring you look at it as a negative signal.
Yep.
I might instead put that
uh,
energy into DMs to the 15 people that you know
Totally.
who know
Like that's
people.
what's going to
yeah.
actually help you.
And
I described it as hand-to-hand combat. Like you'd rather play hand-to-hand combat than cast a wide net. Go ahead, Amina.
yeah, no, and I was gonna say I plus one to Nolan is like we've had people be send me links of like, oh, did you see what this person posted of the work that they've done? Or like this thing that they've built instead of like, oh, like this long post of like now I'm looking. It's like, oh wow, they just built this really cool thing. Maybe we should look into it. Or they shared an insight of a deal that they've closed if they're on the sales side. Like, this is interesting. That's aligned with how we think.
Yep. A couple people are asking, is it strange or weird if someone with like all that managerial experience, like director, group PM kind of experience is applying for like a senior IC role?
There's going
Uh,
to be a question. Like
Yeah,
there's
it's going to be
definitely
strange if you don't explain it.
yeah.
exactly. Yeah, exactly right. Like there's definitely going to be a question of like what's going on here. Um, Gokul Rajaman just posted like yesterday or the day before, like his post was like become an IC. And I would just encourage people to go, like, if you're in that mode and you're thinking about this thing, go read that post. And then when you do apply, like pull out things from that post as to why you are now like pivoting your career into this direction. And I think the things that like Amina wants to see, Amina, correct me if I'm wrong, is like, I got zero for fulfillment out of leading people. I want to actually do work. Like that's what Vercel is looking for, right, Amina?
Yeah. And people, exactly. People are like, I'm down to mentor, do a player coach role, but what I actually care is like shipping my work. Whether that in whatever team you are now, this is specifically to PMs, it's like, I want to ship product. I want to understand what our customers are looking for. I want to understand how to partner with our engineers better. I want to make sure that like we understand how to grow our revenue and our customer base. Like that, those are the things that we care about, not I want to learn how to like delegate this person and that person.
Yeah. Um, Hopefully not beating a dead horse, but someone asked like specifically, I guess there's like a setting of the open for work thing that's only visible to recruiters. Like, is that at all helpful? Or are you saying like, is that also just don't even bother?
I would say
Amina?
recruiters are the people that you don't really want to see that. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I wouldn't. Again, like I think it's better if it's just for recruiters and like not everybody else, but instead I would spend more time focusing on all the other things that we talked about today. Is like how do you create a better profile for yourself? How do you market yourself? Nolan, I completely understand. Like your LinkedIn profile is your brand. Your X is your brand. Like this is all brand work. And so how are you making sure that you're, as Troy mentioned, is like, how do you curate and craft the brand and the message that you want the world to see of who you are?
It actually kind of shows user empathy, right? Like if you show up on my LinkedIn page, right? Am I thinking from your eyes? Like it kind of shows like, can you be customer empathetic? People just, that's how people look at this stuff. Whether or not you like it, like that is the new game on the field.
And I will say, like, recruiters will pass along cringe posts. They will. They'll be like, oh my God, did you see this person who wrote this like extremely long cringe post? Like, so make sure you're not writing cringe long posts.
Yeah.
One thought
Go
again
ahead, Troy.
you just got into my head is there is a subtle but important difference, in my opinion, between uh, building your portfolio and doing the work that you show and actually effectively showing the work. And I think you can demonstrate the relevant skills for the role that you're wanting or applying to in the application process. As it's obvious for like a salesperson. If a salesperson is just applying inbound, they're clearly not a good salesperson. I don't need to interview them. If they're getting really creative about who they're pinging inside of our company and multiple people know about them and they're on everybody's radar and they find a creative way in, they're probably more likely to be a good salesperson because that's what they're going to have to do on the job. As a PM, perhaps you need to be like exceptionally good at organizing. And so like if you, I don't know, reach out with a detailed list of bugs or improvements by using the company's app, or feature requests that's like beautifully organized and represents what a great PM would look like in that company's eyes. by applying, you're also kind of also showcasing your ability to do the job well. So anywhere you can find a way to overlap those two, I think that helps you stand out.
Cool. I want to make sure everyone can get back to their busy days right on time. So I want to start landing this plane. I'm going to share one more link in the chat. This is a really helpful interview that Lenny Rachitsky did with someone named Phil Terry about this concept of never searching alone, job search councils. But the most important thing I think from that interview is really this concept of candidate market fit. And I think in this market more than ever, you really want to figure out how you can position yourself to be the perfect person for a very specific type of role, and then go like laser focus on hunting those roles down through warm connections and referrals. So I would recommend that as a really good watch. People, every time I send that to people, they thank me for that. Cool. Let's just do some final ways that people could potentially go deeper, learn more, be helpful. So maybe we'll do reverse order this time. And Troy, if you want to go first, and we could work back. But if people want to learn more or go deeper in anything, or where would you send them?
Excuse me. Yeah. I try to stay as active as possible on LinkedIn, so that's probably the best place to keep in touch with me. And whenever I can, I try to take the candidate perspective. I'm pretty passionate about helping educate folks in a job search because a lot of what the companies are thinking about is counterintuitive. So I would say my LinkedIn is the best place.
So same as me. Same as me. And then in addition to that, I run 2 podcasts. One's called 10X Recruiting. The other one's called HR Heretics. These will give you more of the perspective from what's happening on the employer side. And I think if you're, even if you're not even like thinking about a job change right now, I just think it's important to always be remembering like there's another party here who's actually making the first decision, which is the most important, to extend offers or to reach out to you. And so I just think it's important to understand how those people think. So if you guys are curious, you can check it out on our podcast.
Thank you. And LinkedIn is good for me as well. I'm also dropping my email. I will try my best to be as responsive as I can quickly, but feel free to reach out.
Awesome. Yeah, V0 is an incredible product being built by a really awesome company right now. So I'm excited for you all. You're hiring a lot, I'm assuming?
We are. And we are hiring a growth PM for V0, and we are hiring PMs across all of Vercel. So definitely reach out, and excited to chat with some of you.
Great. And then for those of you, this is my shameless plug for the course that I teach on Maven. I'm about to teach the last cohort of my course until October, which starts on Tuesday. And it's specifically designed to help PMs get ready for product sense and analytical thinking interviews at companies like Meta and companies that use Meta-like interview processes. There's a bunch of them now. Some of the logos are here at the bottom. And yeah, it's a 2.5-ish week course. It's very interactive. Students really love it. I love teaching it. And I look forward to having any of you join if you're interested. So yeah, just I'll drop a link to the course right here in the chat for those who want to go deeper. And then this will also be included in the follow-up link. I did see a couple of my alumni here in the chat. So it's great to see you all continuing to engage. And I just want to thank the panelists. Thank you all so much for taking the time. I think this has been awesome. I hope it's been helpful for the audience. I know I learned a lot, and I hope everyone has a great rest of your day.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, guys. Thanks, Ben.
Bye-bye.